Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on Unfiltered. Today's going to be a little unusual. I feel like usually we have a lot of conversation and a lot of just opinions,
Mm-hmm.
but we have Ibrahim on with us today.
Assalamu alaikum.
Maz and I are looking forward to this topic, especially being accounting majors and just being into passive income and investing stuff like that. But we're gonna have a conversation on Islamic finance. And Ibrahim, I feel like you don't really need an introduction here, but feel
Jazakallah
free
khair.
to introduce yourself.
My name is Ibrahim from Charlotte, North Carolina. Just been here for 2-3 years now. On my third year. And yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, Imam Ibrahim also has a huge just passion for contracts, right? Contracts and just finance in general. So you were really a perfect fit for this. Maz, I feel like we kind of ended up on this topic just knowing that there are definitely a lot of Muslim people, guys and girls included, that just kind of struggle with what you can invest in and cannot invest in.
Yeah.
And not just investing, right? It's even stuff that's so basic, especially in our age range of like, buying your first house, right? Islamic loan or not, doesn't matter. Paying interest on things, student loans. There's so many things in this world that revolve around a financial issue,
Hmm.
and knowing how to deal with them as a Muslim is very different than knowing how to deal with them as a person, I feel like.
Yeah, really agree. It doesn't, we are like in majors in the field, right? But you don't have to necessarily be a major to understand that like these things are important, right? And like having an understanding from the Islamic backing is definitely very important. So that's why we think this conversation is going to be good, and why we have Imam here.
Yeah, Imam Ibrahim, I want to let you kick it off. I know this is
Yeah.
gonna be like one of your halakas, but for once you got two people that are gonna listen and respond to everything you say.
You'll push back, right?
100%.
Try.
So before talking about the big picture or the big problems, cryptocurrency, stock markets, and loans and mortgages and stuff like that, you first have to establish a basis in understanding, and you have to set your own philosophy. That's one of the problems that we have and it's done when you go to college. You take liberal arts classes, right?
Yep.
So you're taking stuff about the Renaissance, and that's setting a precedence, a philosophy. And then you learn your science. You learn science here, not like whatever it may be, right? Whether it's accounting or finance or chemistry or whatever it is, you're setting a basis of your philosophy, and then you're branching into your science and your understanding. So that's creating a framework in your mind over how you think. So, for example, a chem major, like I'm a chem major, when they look at it holistically, they say, okay, he's a critical thinker, because that's what they're training you to do. Same thing with other STEM classes, engineering, mathematics, whatever it is. You're training yourself to think critically. You're looking at something, you're analyzing, you're questioning everything. While other fields, they're having that. So as Muslims, we have the same thing. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in the Quran, we have a similar set standard or framework over how we look at things. And Islam looks at things much bigger than what we see today in our society. Society is teaching us how to maximize our gains. It's teaching us, to that happiness is richness, right? That for you to be happy, you'd rather cry in a BMW than on a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're taught, and that's the philosophy that's grabbing people's minds. We're looking at these celebrities that have won the lottery of life, if you would, thinking that they have it all. But Islam comes from a different perspective entirely, telling us that, wait a minute, hold on, press the brakes. Life is the first step, and then there are steps afterwards. There's the life of the grave, and then there's the akhirah, how you stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are those things that matter more, right? And so the deen has set that framework for us. So what is the framework that it sets? The first thing that we understand is life is temporary, that it's not about this life. Whatever we do for a portion of this life to survive, but we do it in general to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that the akhirah is easier for us. And part of that is, to make that easier for us, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by extension Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more so, explained to us certain things to help us in being independent and feeling comfortable with that message. One of those things, for example, is the understanding of rizq, right? Your provision. There's the hadith of Umar, where he said, if you truly rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you should, you'd be like a bird. It wakes up hungry, its belly's empty, it goes and it eats and it comes back and it's full. And every day just repeats the cycle, and it's not stressing out. You don't see a bird, having gray hairs or whatever. It's like so that's one of the examples. If you truly rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that the provision is set. What you have and what you will have and what you will not have is already written 50,000 years before creation. And when the soul was put into your body while you were in your mother's womb, it was written for you exactly what you're going to get. And just to emphasize this even more, a lot of people don't know this, when rain falls, every raindrop is carried by 50,000 angels to go to its specific place so that it nourishes that specific area. So everything is written entirely and thoroughly, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is Al-Alim, right? He is the all-knowing. He encompasses everything with His knowledge. And so what we have what we are provided is already written for us. The other thing is the understanding of qadr, and this is it's the same concept, right? Where understanding the concept of destiny, right? That what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for us. It's rizq and this concept of qadr are intertwined. But there's a very interesting ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala consoles the believers, in which if they go through some kind of calamity, if they go through, let's say they invested in the stocks and all of a sudden it just collapsed on them and they lost all their money, right? Wasn't there that article of the kid that committed suicide? And
we talked about it a couple months back.
So he first of all, I think it was a mistake. Like he didn't even.
It was just a timing error on the market.
Yeah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, ما أصاب من مصيبة ما أصابكم من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها. Whatever afflicts you of calamities has already been written in a book before. إن ذلك على الله يسير. That's easy for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم, so that you don't despair over what you've lost, over something that you missed. That girl that you wanted to marry, right? It wasn't written for you. A believer is happy with that. You're trying to get a certain amount of wealth. It's not written for you. You're happy with that. وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. And you're not proud, pride here in the negative sense, right? That you're not proud and arrogant over what you have now. So there's a balance, that you're humble and you're hopeful at the same time, knowing that everything is written. And so the mentality of the believer from the onset, from the beginning, is that everything is written for me. I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Surah Al-Talaq, right, where it talks about divorce. Divorce is a financial calamity, right? For in the American sense, and even in the emotional sense, the legal sense, the social sense, from all different ways, it's a calamity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the believers because there's still a financial responsibility. Imagine a guy, he has to divorce his wife, right? But for 3 months, if you would, afterwards he still has to financially support her. Let's say they're just they're not getting along, they don't like each other, whatever happens, and he still has to financially support her. He's gonna feel some type of way about it. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَيَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. Says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for which you don't know. It'll come out of nowhere. Something that you're unsuspecting for it, the provision will come for you. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever relies on Allah, that's enough for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed for everyone their due proportions. This is in Surah Al-Talaq. And so that's the philosophy of Islam when it comes to rizq. When we come to do business, if we don't have that philosophy and we don't understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching everything we do, and the angels are scribbling down every little deed that we do, every lie that we say to try and make a sale, every kind of the stuff that happens in the market, whether it's like the physical market or the digital market, scams are happening left and right. People are stepping on each other's boundaries. The believer has already been given this framework of you're going to be held responsible, and don't worry over something that you're going to lose. And so that's an ethical part of how we look at business
Yeah.
and trade.
Yeah. Miles, let's break that down for like I feel like Imam can give us so many like building blocks for it. I feel like we see that a lot like right now. And I feel like one thing you see it a lot with is just like, and especially in terms of social media, is like TikTok, right? You see a lot of people that are just creators who have a ton of followers, a ton of money. And we talked about this in so many podcasts where when you see what somebody else has, I feel like you kind of want more.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like important to hear that whatever you are going to get is already predetermined for you and predestined for you. Imam Ibrahim, what's the take on like if you are, like, so for someone like me and Maz, right, when you recently graduate and you go back to like grad school, like is that you're just like, kind of like following like your progression then? It's like that's already written in for you if you're going to go to grad school to like attain a higher salary or whatever, or is it like if you didn't do anything at all, would that still be written in for you?
What do you mean?
Like, is how much of things are like written in for you?
Well, everything is written,
Okay.
and this is a little bit of a tangent
Yeah,
when it comes to qadr, but think of it this way: Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created time, and so the past, present, and future are the same for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so He knows the past, He knows the present, and He knows the future. He knows what you're going to do. He knows what you're doing right now, out of knowledge. And so it's all written out of His knowledge. So you going through the journey of life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what you're going to do, and that's where it was written to preserve your right in His court, right? That this is a right upon everybody, that they get their provisions that were written for them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the just, and so he's written it, and he commands the angels to make sure they facilitate it. I was gonna say with regards to well, I'll let you guys
Yeah. Maz, any takes on what we just talked about?
A lot to process, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, like, I think he said it best. Like, everything is written, right? Everything is written for you. You have to come in the mindset that you can't, like, we try to like pave our path, I guess, in certain ways.
Yeah.
You were saying like how we could go to grad school and whatnot, but we know at the end of the day that, like, again, that's written for us. So.
Well, here's another thing that another issue with that, especially you hear it from Republicans, where they'll say like a person who's homeless or they don't have anything, they'll be like, well, it's his fault. He should get up and get a job, right? That's ignorant from our religious sense. That, yeah, you put in your effort, but even then, people have gotten PhDs and they've gotten so much, but they end up with nothing because it's written. This is a provision that's written for you. So there has to be hard work on your end, but at the same time, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you in getting more provision. Okay.
I feel like this whole success convo was definitely like the first foundation, right? Like whatever is meant to be for you will be for you. A second topic that the three of us that talked about prior was the idea of like, if we're going back in times, like trading money for money or like trading gold for gold. I felt like in our conversation that was like the second foundation. If you understood how things work, then you can apply them on a bigger level. Would you agree, or do you feel like there's a different level that needs to be taken before you get there?
Well, I mean, I see where you're coming from. There are these rules of sorts that we have in place, right? That help us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows His creation. So He gave us these rules and taught us these restrictions of sorts to help protect our rights, right? And so the whole gold for gold issue, right, that we talked about with riba, creating money out of money. That's in essence what you're doing. When you do a usurious trade, you're charging. Let's say you loan somebody $1,000 and they give it back to you as 1,100, then you're in essence trying to create money, and so that creates an imbalance in society and between people, right? There's a form of enmity that comes out of it, and so to place these restrictions on people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave us this sharia that protects people's rights and also protects the harmony of society. So is that where you were trying to go with it?
Yeah.
Basically, like, that's why, like, that question of, like, why Forex, right? Forex, you said the Forex is considered haram, right? Instead of stocks, right? Because that's money for money. Like, I think that's kind of what we're trying to...
That's like an example if you were to give it.
Yeah, okay.
So let's start with... So when we look at fiqh, right? This is the realm of fiqh. Fiqh is jurisprudence. When we look at it, we start with the big picture, which are the maqasid. The maqasid are the things that the sharia is trying to protect and preserve for us, right? This big picture mentality. Why, for example, if we were to summarize it, why is khamr, right, wine, why is it haram? Why is zina, adultery, why is it haram? Why is riba haram? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command us to do certain things? When we can look at it and say, yeah, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, right? That's the easy answer. But then there's another answer to it as well, and there are these preservations that the Sharia is trying to protect. And the scholars have talked about this. There are 5 things the Sharia protects. The first is your deen, your religion. That's why, for example, da'wah, right, calling people to Islam and stuff like that, it's mandatory for people to spread the religion because you're protecting it, but at the same time you're protecting your own religion, right? So protection of religion, protection of life. Let's say you're starving to death and there's a ham sandwich like right there. If you're starving to death, then you can eat that even though it's haram. Why? Because you're protecting life. The third is protecting wealth, protecting people's wealth, and protecting the concept of wealth in general. You don't want something that, like for example, something that would cause the market to inflate ridiculously, or let's say like in certain governments,
with GameStop.
GameStop probably.
And we had a combo of monopolies last night.
Yeah.
The concept of monopolies, yeah, that's protecting people's wealth, but also like in China, for example, they play with the currency, right? The value of the currency, as an example. And so these things all cause issues when it comes to people's wealth. Imagine you have $1,000 in your bank, hopefully more, but let's say.
I mean, we just got out of college. I wouldn't bet on that.
Probably don't have $1,000. Let's say you have $100 in your bank, and $100 buys you, I don't know, a phone, right? Whatever.
Not today, but
not today, right? But that's the thing. That's the thing. You have
prepaid.
$100, it buys you a phone.
Right.
The next day, something happens in which someone has done something irresponsible or greedy, and all of a sudden, that $100 doesn't even buy you a can of Pepsi, right? And that actually happened in Syria, for example. What happened with their currency? It just completely tanked. Iraq, when they went through the war, it just everyone's wealth, whatever they had, it just became completely worthless. I think in other countries with the rupee and in other countries it's the same issue. So to preserve people's wealth, right, the Sharia has these things that are set in place so that we can all feel safer and have people's rights that are protected. Then you have the protection of intellect. That's why, for example, wine is haram, because it corrupts people's intellect, and gambling is also haram because it infringes on people's wealth, but it also sabotages people's intellect as well, where a person gets addicted to it. And inshallah next time we'll talk about stock markets, where there is this psychological effect of an addiction to gambling. You always want that next thing, right? And people get addicted to the stock market and they start, like GameStop or whatever happened, they just start jumping into it, and it turns into this cycle in which they've destroyed themselves financially and mentally. And the last one is protecting lineage, and that's why we have marriage, to protect your lineage, so that we know who is a sibling, who is not a sibling, who is a family member, who is not a family member. And in society today, you have people that are just like they're having zina willy-nilly at this point, and nobody knows who's a sibling and who's not. And let's say later on down the road, they, generations past, they eventually have relationships. Now you have a corruption of society, and we already know that people who are related, they have a higher risk of mental illness and stuff like that. So to preserve that and to document it and to make sure people understand who they are and where they come from, that's why we have marriage, right? So the Sharia is purposeful in all of its aspects. Now going back to wealth, right? You're protecting people's dignity. You're protecting people's rights. You're not, people. These sales that can be ambiguous, or it's like a scam of sorts.
White lies, small
white lies. You're covering something up. Like the worst of it that I've seen was working in the car business, right? Let's say there's a check engine light or whatever. they'll just drive 50 miles on the road, put something in the in the engine, and turn off the light, run the inspection, and you're good to go. Next thing you know, the guy's driving, and he probably had a long drive back home. He just came from another city to get the car, and his car breaks down, right? Stuff like that happens all the time. You've overstepped the boundaries over someone else's rights. And, by the way, everyone crosses over Jahannam. Everyone. And there is a place after Jahannam that people who have financial or life disputes where they did something wrong, let's say someone punched someone in the face and he broke his tooth, right? And he never paid or he never got forgiveness for it, he's going to have to face that person on the Day of Judgment in the hellfire until he's able to pass through it so that he can go to Jannah. It's the same thing with, someone does a scam of sorts. He's done injustice. He's going to have to face it on the Day of Judgment. So every little thing is important for us to treat it responsibly and to be, clear in what we're doing.
Yeah. I'm going to wind it back a little
Sure.
bit in this convo. Especially for the people that usually watch this podcast, right? I think one big thing is student loan interest, and then if you're going to buy a home, interest in that sort. Are there exceptions in Islam to paying interest, or is it just are you just kind of being Muslim? It's just you should be expected to have the full value weighting. Are there exceptions, or is it just kind of not permissible?
Okay, so interest is not the same as usury.
Okay.
We have to understand that. And interest in the American sense is not always the same as riba in the Islamic sense, because it's how the contract is formed that determines if it's riba or not if you call it interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one angle to things, where you can do some research on how the contract, which everything is a contract, right?
Yeah.
How the contract is done. Is it actually riba or not? That's one side of the thing, one side of the question when it comes to loans, or just interest in general. The other aspect, when you're talking about student loans specifically, you have to look at certain things that are necessary to survive. Can you actually not just survive, but survive with dignity without a bachelor's?
No.
You can?
You can or can't? Sorry.
Yeah, can
He's
you?
asking you, can you?
Yeah, you're nodding. You're like,
I mean, especially in our culture, we've even talked about this in our pods, that as a guy, as a male in our society, if we don't
you
have
can't
a
even
bachelor's,
get married.
Dude,
You're not gonna get married.
I just think in
Forget about getting a
general,
job.
You definitely need a bachelor's. Otherwise, you're not gonna
Yeah.
get a job.
Yeah.
You're gonna be stuck doing something that you probably don't want to do for minimum wage.
Well, also, when we look at how life is, we don't judge it by the exceptions. Like Mark Wahlberg, or all these other guys who,
Yeah.
That's an exception to the rule. That if you can do that, great, good job. But most people are not like that, right? They have to do their bachelor's, and now it's becoming where you have to do your master's at this point, or some kind of technical specialist studies or whatever.
I think that's why people they'll see the stock market and they'll feel like that's a way for them to get out. They'll see things like GameStop going up this much and they'll be like, "Wow, that could have been me, right? I could have put my money in there and I would have been set. I wouldn't have to go to school." So I don't know. That's just
House always wins, though.
Yeah.
Everyone knows this.
I also agree though.
House always wins.
I saw it on LinkedIn, and there's this guy. I want to say he went to University of Houston. So for him to pop on my page, it had to be liked a lot of times, right? And he's talking about how last July he started with $1,000, maybe $2,000, something like that, along those lines. And he showed his portfolio now, and he's in one account in TD Ameritrade he's got 1.6 million, and his Robinhood account's got 1.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in the comments is like, "Wow, I wish that could be me." Wow, and he was to his credit, obviously he did some amazing things, timing, luck, whatever. But I feel like that's so easy to get caught up in that could have been me.
Or rizq.
Yeah.
Right? This provision from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was given to him at that time. Framework, right?
Yeah.
How we look at things. That we can't assume that just because somebody had that stroke of fortune, it's not going to happen to me. You still have to put in the hard work, right? And also another thing is you do have to study to be, you want to elevate your education levels as a society in general. You want to be at a higher level of thinking. And so there's a lot of benefits to studying. Not everyone is able to, financial aid is, the whole system is weird, and someone would say it's broken.
Pretty broken,
right? Yeah. Where it prefers certain people over others, and even the schools, how they I don't know. I feel like universities at this point are becoming a business model
Yeah.
that is just to make
yeah.
money.
Well, we saw with the USC scandal, right? Where
Yeah.
was it
I mean,
Olivia Jade?
Yeah, I mean, even with our own like education standards like today, right? Like I could say like I don't think I'm learning anything really because I'm especially with the whole online process like and like that's why I feel like it comes back to the whole like making like having an easy way out, right? Everyone these days they're all online. The amount of things that you could use online to get your education passed, like just to get like a pass, right? Like even DePaul this year, they offered because of COVID, they offered pass fail options. So like if you're doing bad in your grades, like if you're like you have a C or whatever, or even a D, you could pass it off as pass, and then you pass that class, and it
Doesn't
doesn't
affect
affect
your
your GPA.
GPA.
And they are doing that up until
Yeah.
even now, up until now. So like if I'm
Do
doing
they
bad
give
in
you an
class,
A or what do they?
No,
give
it
you?
just
It-
counts
it-
like it
it-
doesn't
it doesn't
attack
count
your
to
GPA.
So like the first 2 years or first 3 years, whatever you like were doing in school, like that GPA will just remain the same.
Let me
and you can
apply to
just-
DePaul right now.
Yeah. Well, in Maz's case, right? So Maz's last 4 quarters, and you've been at DePaul
Yeah.
for 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
So 4 of his 6 quarters, he
So
could have done absolutely
absolutely nothing.
nothing, just called it passed, and that would have been it for him.
Exactly. So like, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's like that in a form of like an easy way out, right? Like kind of relates back to the whole stock market. And people like in today's
Yeah.
society, at least people are just having that way, and it's like it's
I think that comes
Terrible.
back to the combo of greed, though, right?
yeah, it does.
All right.
definitely.
I feel like you
Yeah,
have a
but,
lot to say.
I mean, going back to the student loans, right? So
Go
the
for it.
question is, can you or can you not? Again, this goes back to the bigger picture. People need it, right? People need to study to get a job to move forward in life. Not everyone is going to be able to do construction, right? They're probably more suited to do medicine, and it's in their personality. It's in their hardwiring of sorts. In that case, a lot of the scholars were like, okay, you take what is necessary, and as much as possible, you do whatever it is that you can to reduce the interest on it and pay it off as fast as you can. So that's one of the opinions that's out there.
Would that still apply to, like, I know you and I, like, we had a convo last night about how, like, renting is completely worthless because you get nothing out of what you're paying for. So would that same logic then extend to, like, buying a house, right? Like, I know you have your take on Islamic loans, so without going
Let's
to
talk about that
Yeah.
next time. Let's
Okay.
talk about that next
All
time.
right, we can talk about it
Yeah.
next time.
Inshallah.
Let's transition to greed, though,
Sure.
because I feel like you had a lot of interesting things to say about greed, and you had the post from, I mean, you see that was posted on Facebook about how, like, the GameStop stock was going up, and how that, like, really symbolized a lot of things about greed.
Mhm.
So
Well, one of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that the market will become very close, right? It'll be very. The Prophet ﷺ says "taqarrub al-aswaq," right? That the market will be very close. What does that mean? Some of the scholars they said, well, that means that trade becomes very fast, right? Like Amazon, you order it and it's right there. Or for example, between countries, or how the trade market, the global market works in general. So it becomes very fast, very quick. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that the international market itself is one thing, where there are no borders between countries anymore. Everyone is just like quickly buying between each other. And that's what we're seeing with these startups like what was it, Alibaba.
yeah.
Like you just quickly get stuff from all over the place, and it's no longer about country restrictions or working within your locality. You're buying all over the
Internationally.
world, and it's become one market, right?
Okay.
And so whether it's the speed of it or the access, regardless, they're saying that the market itself becomes very condensed, and that poses a lot of issues with competition and stuff like that. But that's besides the point. The Prophet ﷺ says that from the signs of the Day of Judgment is that the market will collapse, will become shorter, will become constricted. And he also says that people will become more greedy, and there will be less barakah in people's wealth, and people will have less amana, right? Less trust. All of these things are piling on top of each other. It goes back to how they do business. When Bani Adam, right, a human being, when he gets a taste of something, he wants more of it. It's never enough. One person was telling me in Medina that he was in gangs and stuff like that before Islam, and then he accepted Islam and he purified himself, and mashallah, he's doing great. He's a chaplain at all the prisons in South Carolina.
Wow.
So one of the things that he said, that when it comes to the haram, why we try to, when you do it once, it turns into this habit of sorts is because you're chasing that high that you get from the first time you've done it, right? And so the concept of getting something nice, doing some kind of good sale or taking advantage of United Airlines or GameStop or whatever it is, you've earned yourself an extra $500. In reality, $500 hasn't really done anything, but you won something there. So you're like, wait a minute, I can do this again. And so you double down, and then you add more, double down again, and put more into it. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that if Bani Adam was given a mountain of gold, he'll always want another one. He'll always want a second mountain of gold. And nothing is going to fill the stomach of Bani Adam except dirt. Meaning you're going to chase and chase and chase until you die, and then you're going to be in the grave, and dirt is going to fill your organs. So people naturally incline towards greed because they're trying to maximize their own gains, their own personal things, and they put themselves in this cycle, and it turns into a frenzy, and they become mindless about it, and eventually their whole ethical understanding of what's right and what's wrong is measured by what I will benefit, not what everyone else will benefit. I could care less what the person next to me can be starving for all I care, as long as I'm happy. That's the cycle that people put themselves in when they fall into this way of life, if you would.
Yeah, I feel like that could be broken down between person to person. I feel like that's something you see a lot with businesses right now. So like when coronavirus happened, right, and everyone had the chance to apply for like the PPP loan, it was supposed to be subject to people that like actually needed like these small businesses that needed to get them out to their employees so their employees could continue like helping their families. And there were a ton of reports that I went out to a lot of people who didn't need it, like self-imposed millionaires, people that had enough money that would literally never need it. Wasn't there an NBA team that got it?
I think so. I mean, I work in an audit right now. Today, I was literally doing work for a client. And
so I did this morning.
It was a single person, one lady who was only employee, and she got the PPP loan. It was like $20,000 she got, and she just got to distribute it to herself. And I was like, wow, that's insane.
And then these same people
she has to pay it back.
And then these same people come back to people like me and Maz, and we fill it out. We fill out their PPP forms, and we fill them out.
Through a business, not personal.
I mean, even if you're an individual and you're a sole proprietorship, you could have still applied for, and you could have said that you had employees under you. It depends. It's very complex based on like your structuring of like how your organization is structured and whatnot. But then you could go to companies like Maz and I work at.
They're gonna tax people, bro. They're gonna tax people.
No, it's not taxable. You fill them out, and it's all good. You move on.
Down the line, they're gonna.
Down the line, like tax rates rise anyway. But I think you also see it. Sticking on the theme of coronavirus, like you see billionaires who have enough money to keep funding, but they cut staff. And I feel like that resonates with what you're saying. It's like I care about me and not everyone around me.
That's why sadaqah and charities are so important.
Yeah.
You're turning off that fire inside, and you're feeding that better side of you to become stronger. And you're saying, I don't need wealth. I'd rather help my neighbor or my friend or my brother, and my family members. There are guys, by the way, that their own parents are struggling, and they don't care.
Yeah.
They'll put them in a nursing home for all they care. They won't help them.
Yeah, I mean, the greed stuff it's like I could personally attest to it. Honestly, like at least when I first got into the stock market, it was kind of the same thing. Like where like when you see those first couple things, like you hit on a couple certain stocks, and you're like, wow, like this is good. Like, I'm making money, and then it kind of like one bad move kind of like has you like put yourself in the mirror, and it's like even when you're doing good, right? You're like when I was doing good, I was
it's kind of obsessive.
Yeah, it becomes obsessive, right? Because like, you have to at least have that boundary, and like no, like even when I was doing good, at least I was giving something every single time. I was like, wow, this was a good day. Like alhamdulillah, like I made good money. Like I have to give it back, right? Because like it's good, but at the same time, it's like one bad move gives you that like reality check kind of, where it's like, man.
So there was that day last week where you dropped a text in our group chat and you're like, yo, Express is going up, all right? Yeah. And the second you said it, I was working. I got off a meeting. I'm like, all right, let me go check this out. And I bought into something, and for the next hour, I guess I shouldn't be saying, I didn't do a thing. I was just watching the chart. I was like, up, down, up, down. I was like, oh, where's this going? But I feel like part of that, the issue is just accessibility. Just technology.
Isn't CarMax? Was CarMax yesterday? Was it?
Went up?
I don't know. I stopped looking. It wasn't good for my mental health.
There was one that yesterday it shot up like crazy.
But I feel like accessibility is the big thing. Like between Robinhood, or even if you're talking about gambling, Maz, like when the sports books opened in Illinois, like there was such an influx of people that are gambling because it was so accessible now, right? Like you didn't have to go to a casino. You could do whatever you had to do, and you could just do it from where you were sitting. You could be watching the game in front of you, and you were like, all right, well, the line moved a certain way. Like let's do this. So I think accessibility plays a big part in greed, but I feel like when you lay down the foundation, you talk about risk. I feel like then it puts it into perspective. Like greed isn't. It's not really even possible to be greedy. Like I guess it's an emotion more than like you can't get more. I don't even know if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
You're not gonna get more than it's there's a saying that you chase the dunya, you become you're serving it. You're a servant towards the dunya. But you turn your back away from it and it will serve you. It'll chase after you. So inshallah, maybe next time we can talk more about the nitty gritty, but having this foundation is really important, because if we were to just come and say, well, this is haram and this is halal, some people would be like, well, I don't think that's fair, right?
Yeah.
But if you understand where the sharia is coming from, understanding the bigger picture of life and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, right? Yeah. And the whole point of life anyway, then those conversations later become easier, because now you're saying, okay, I will do this or I will not do this to please my creator. And even though there's a concept in our sharia that if you're doing something that's mubah means that it's not haram, it's not halal, it's halal, it's just like no, mubah means that there's no hasanats. It's like you can wear blue, you can wear black, you can do business, you can, like, it's okay, whatever, what it is, right? It can become something that rewards you if you do it for the right reason. So if you're doing business truthfully and honestly and for the right reasons, and then you're for example helping people around you with it and teaching others. Let's say someone was successful in his startup, and he goes out of his way to teach others so that he wants others to be successful as well. His endeavor becomes filled with blessings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards him for that. So you can do something simple for the right reasons and you will get reward for it, or you can do things that are detrimental to you and not regard what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or his messenger have to say about it, and then you lose yourself in the process.
What if you do something shady to get yourself money or whatever, but then also like try to give back, like to do like that stuff?
Something Robin Hood like
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Does it like cancel out? Like how does that work? I guess I don't know.
You can't do that.
So I feel like
you can't do that, all right?
what am I doing? Maz, I feel like Raheem said a lot. Yes. And I feel like for a lot of people, it might have just like either gone over your head or it might have been hard. Let's summarize your key takeaways. I feel like my biggest one was you got to think from the framework of we and not me. I feel like if you keep everything from like
we have a socialist.
No, you said everything. Oh no.
I'm just playing.
Everything you said came up as more. If you think big picture, you think about other people, not just yourself. You're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Honestly, the bigger picture is definitely something that we have to always have in the back of our mind and always understand, because this is just the fake world, I guess. This is like our practice life, right? So
yeah. No, inshallah, next time we talk about loans, because I feel like there was so much more that we could have talked about that we talked about last night that we haven't even touched on.
Yeah, inshallah.
Between loans, the market, cryptocurrency. Hopefully by next week you've got a ton of research on options. We could talk through those.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, inshallah.
But if you guys are listening, you made it this far, and you guys have questions, feel free to DM the account, put them in the comments. We'll make sure to get them answered if there's anything pressing or lingering on your minds.
Inshallah.
But until then, Imam Brahim, thank you for being on.
I hope to see you soon.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah.